What's up everyone? Hope you all are having a good day. My name is Fang and today I'm going to be doing a concise review of what could be the controller to get if you're on a tight budget. I'm talking about the Gulikit KK3, which comes in at a price of just $35 US. This unit was sent to me by AKNES for review. This has no impact on my video and all the opinions in this video are of my own. They see the video at the same time as all of you. You can buy the KK3 for $35 on the official AKNES store on Amazon. You can also buy this controller from AliExpress and Banggood and Alibaba and stores like that for a little cheaper. Those websites may not have as good customer service as Amazon. Let's begin with the unboxing. The KK3 package doesn't have any extras that you see in a lot of other products. Just a little paperwork, the controller, and a USB A to C cable, the essentials. Unlike the KK3 Pro, the regular KK3 doesn't come with a hard shell case, which is understandable at this price point, but if you intend to travel with the controller and need to purchase a separate carrying case, that will narrow the price gap between the KK3 and the KK3 Pro. The packaging is small and lightweight, but my controller arrived with the shell popped open on the right side. I don't know for sure whether it was popped open in shipping or if it was a manufacturing defect, but I suspect the former considering how beat up my package arrived. Let's go over some of the general features of the Gulikit KK3 controller that are shown on the back of the box. The KK3 only comes in one colorway, unlike other members of the KK3 family of controllers. The KK3 actually launched the latest out of all the KK3 controllers, and it features Gulikit's new analog stick technology, the TMR sticks. More on that later in the video. There will most likely be newer revisions of the KK3 Pro and the Max version as well with TMR, but I can't say that with full certainty. This controller has Gulikit's second generation tactile buttons. They're not mechanical buttons, but they feel super tactile. I personally prefer the feel of these buttons over the mechanical clicky buttons of my FlyDigit Apex 4 for some games like Celeste. The KK3 has these stainless steel anti-friction rings on the sticks which work really well and feel super smooth. It also looks a lot better than having the anti-friction rings on the shell of the controller like in some controllers. The controller has Hall sensing ZR and ZL buttons, which are basically the R2 and L2 buttons, and these are quite accurate and should last practically forever. It also features a basic asymmetric rotor vibration system which works quite well and it is pleasant. The vibration intensity can be adjusted between 3 levels with on-board shortcuts that are listed in the manual. The KK3 has a 6-axis gyroscope built into the controller, but that only seems to work in the Nintendo Switch mode and not all modes. You can use it on PC by setting it up through Steam input and putting it in Nintendo Switch mode, but that's a workaround and doing it every time is a little annoying. The KK3 also has turbo functionality, which they call auto continuous shooting, and it also has semi-auto continuous shooting, which means it only turbos when you keep the button held down. The controller comes with a 950 mAh battery which lasts a long time thanks to the TMR sticks and the lack of RGB. I haven't tested the exact battery life, but I will update it in the video description. The KK3 connects and works with a lot of platforms: Windows, Nintendo Switch, Android, iOS, macOS, but it doesn't work with PlayStation and Xbox without an adapter. Now let's talk about how the KK3 looks. The KK3 only comes in one color variant, which is this cool grey color. I think it looks quite neutral and inoffensive. It goes well in a variety of setup styles and blends in quite well. The black sticks stand out as a contrasting feature and this looks good in my opinion. The Gulikit logo in the center lights up, which looks nice. It also doubles as a charging indicator, which comes in handy. Red when low on battery, orange when charging, and green when fully charged. We can change the look of the controller by adding replacement KK3 Max buttons that can be purchased separately, but this also brings the cost of the controller up significantly. If you have some lying around like I did, I love the way the black buttons look on the controller. Although, I prefer the matte, flat texture of the stock grey buttons over the glossy, glass-like, curved texture of the black buttons. The controller is made completely out of hard plastic with no rubberized surfaces. The bottom half of the shell is textured and provides a nice grip. The top half is completely smooth and it gets slippery when you hold it tight, especially with larger hands like mine. It also gets slippery when you get sweaty hands. It's not glossy smooth, it's more like a chalky matte feel. I'm not the biggest fan of the feel of the top shell of this controller. Comparing it to other comparable controllers, I much prefer the texture of the KK3 Pro plastic top, which is sort of a grainy finish. The controller isn't too heavy, but it also isn't super light. It feels premium in the hand when you're not touching the top surface. Do note that I'm particularly sensitive to smooth surfaces because the sweat and surface combined just gives me the ick. You might not mind it as much as I do. Next, let's talk about the buttons, the D-pads, the triggers, and the shoulder buttons. The face buttons on this controller are some of the best membrane buttons I've ever tried. They're Gulikit's second generation tactile buttons that use a tactility mechanism on top of a membrane mechanism. Sure, they aren't mechanical, but they feel really close to being mechanical with how tactile they are to press. The ABXY face buttons feel super responsive with no missed inputs or sticky buttons. I tested them on games like Celeste and Hollow Knight that require quick and well-timed button presses. The controller fares well for games such as these. The face buttons are in a switch layout, which means the A and B buttons and the X and Y buttons are switched around. I'm used to the Xbox layout of buttons, but most people don't really look at their controllers, so that's not really an issue. You get used to it pretty quick. You can buy the button kit from Gulikit to change the layout as I stated before. The D-pad is quite nice, but it has a minor issue. The diagonal inputs are not very tactile. This is a gripe that I have with most of the KK3 lineup, but it's not a deal breaker to me. I tried using the D-pad for games like Celeste and Mortal Kombat, and I didn't have any missed inputs. The diagonals work well, they just don't feel as tactile as the 4 directions. Just so we're clear, they're still a little tactile, they're just less tactile than the 4 directions. This is felt especially when you roll your thumb from a direction to a diagonal. The shoulder buttons are quite nice. They're some of the best I've tried at this price range, and they're very difficult to beat. They feel very tactile and have a nice crisp feeling when actuated. They're still not mechanical buttons, but they feel really good. The one issue I have with these shoulder buttons is that they are attached at only one point, and thus the force needed to actuate the button noticeably varies when pressing on the inner side compared to the outer side. But we're nitpicking at this point, and it's not a deal breaker at all. Even my FlyDigi Apex 4, which is 3 times more expensive than the KK3, has the shoulder buttons attached at one point. The analog triggers are nice, they feel super smooth and are hall sensing triggers. Out of the box, the performance was quite bad, but after calibrating them by following the instructions in the manual, they have been a joy to use. They're fairly even, but they have a little too much pre and post dead zone for my liking. This doesn't affect the performance too much in most games, but in games like Forza and Assetto Corsa, where fine control is needed, the trigger dead zones are a little difficult to get used to. Some other things to note is that this controller doesn't have any back buttons or back paddles, which is fair enough at this price point, but the lack of this feature makes the KK3 a controller that I will seldom use for the kinds of games that I play. This is great for retro games, especially when emulating on Android, as the lack of back buttons makes clipping on phone mounts really easy, and this controller works with most cheap aftermarket phone mounts. It's a great first controller for someone, but I have been spoiled with back buttons and paddles from other controllers, so this lack of a feature sticks out like a sore thumb. The other buttons also feel nice to use, and they're just membrane buttons. Good ones though, so that's nice. Here is what the buttons sound like. Next, let's talk about the key feature of this controller, which is the sticks. This controller comes with TMR sticks. It's a new technology that Gulikit has implemented into its controllers. The sticks feel great to use and they are super smooth. TMR technology comes with the benefits of Hall effect sticks. No drift, long lifespan, higher precision, but it's a lot more energy efficient than Hall effect sticks. Technical details of TMR technology are beyond the scope of this review video, so if you want to learn more about the TMR stick technology, check out the videos linked in the description below. The radius of movement allowed for the sticks is quite small. I had to use height increasing thumb grips to make the sticks comfortably usable, especially with my large hands. It's good that the TMR sticks are precise enough for the default configuration to work, but I think the radius should have been a little larger, or the controller needs to include taller sticks by default. The stick curve is non-adjustable and it's a very linear curve. What this means is that the sensitivity doesn't ramp up a lot going from inside to the outside circle. I wish this was adjustable, as the precision of the TMR sticks would make for a great experience with this feature. The anti-friction rings on the sticks work flawlessly. The stick tensioning is nice, it's not too loose, not too tight. The stick centering is nice and smooth. L3 and R3 are nice to press as well, I just don't use those too much. The sticks can be replaced with taller sticks that you can purchase separately from Gulikit. The tall sticks feel nicer and are easier to control, but they add to the cost of the controller. Let's talk about the connectivity of this controller. The KK3 can be used in wired mode via USB-C cable, which is included in the box, but you can also use any other USB-C cable that you have lying around. And it can also be used in Bluetooth mode. The KK3 does not support 2.4 GHz wireless. The Bluetooth and wired performances are quite good and I have no complaints in their performance. Do note that depending on the mode which the controller is on and the method of connection, the polling rate changes between 125Hz and 250Hz. The KK3 runs at 250Hz only in wired D-input mode, which is the Windows mode on the controller. In every other mode that I tested, the controller had a 125Hz polling rate. In wired mode, the average latency is around 12 milliseconds, which is a good number. But in Bluetooth, the latency is around 43 milliseconds, which is clearly felt when using the controller for precise games like Celeste. It's not a bad performance in terms of Bluetooth latency, but I would still use this controller in wired mode. Let's talk about some of the other features on this controller. The KK3 comes with a 6-axis gyroscope, which only works in Nintendo Switch mode. There is a workaround available on PC which lets you use the controller's gyro, but it's a little annoying to do every time you want to use the gyro. You have to use the KK3 in Switch mode, in Steam input, and it'll work. The vibration in this controller is nice. It is best described as a crisp feeling. The hard material of the controller combined with the smaller size of the controller hurts my hands a little bit on the maximum vibration strength, but that's a me problem and it's no issue with the strength set to medium. The vibration is fairly detailed. It's good enough for the price and I don't expect much more at this price. The rotor vibration mechanism in the KK3 is just about as good as any first-party controller that I've ever used. Before I reach my conclusion about this controller, I'm gonna compare the KK3 to the KK3 Pro. The KK3 Pro comes with back paddles, which the KK3 lacks. The KK3 Pro has a 2.4 GHz dongle mode and a wired mode that supports 1000 Hz polling rate. The KK3 is stuck with 250Hz on wired and 125Hz on Bluetooth. The KK3 Standard Edition has TMR sticks while the KK3 Pro comes with Hall effect sticks. The TMR sticks are technically better, but I have a feeling that Gulikit is going to revise the KK3 Pro to have TMR sticks. I'll show my overall scores on the screen right now, and the total score comes out to be a 7.125 out of 10. To me, these differences between the KK3 Pro and the KK3 are enough of a reason to save up a little more and go for the KK3 Pro instead of the KK3 Standard. If you want TMR sticks for the KK3 Pro, you can buy the TMR modules separately and install them yourselves. There might be TMR revisions of the KK3 Pro and Max coming out later on, so if you're watching this video in the future, this might not even be a point of comparison anymore. If you're on an absolute strict budget, then yeah, you can go for the KK3 Standard. It's a solid controller with all the basic features dialed in. It feels great to use and the features that it does offer are quite well refined. But if you must get other features as well, some other options around the same price range would be the FlyDigi Vader 4 Pro, the Easy SMX X10, the Blades 2 TMR. They come with their own caveats though, so make sure you look into them properly before you buy them. I might do a review of the Vader 4 Pro on this channel soon, so keep an eye out for that. That concludes my review of the Gulikit KK3 controller. If you found this video informative and helpful, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel for further reviews.